Hello, you are listening to Those Other Girls with Mallory and Friends. I'm Mallory, and we are changing culture and bringing back traditional values. For those who are new to the podcast, this is not a pop culture podcast like other pop culture podcasts. We are talking about life, career, relationships, pop culture, all the things from a Christian conservative perspective. So we're going to talk about some things today on this glorious Women's Month that you will not hear from other girl-related podcasts. Some things that you probably might feel a little uncomfortable with, but we're going to have this conversation because it needs to be had. So I'm really excited. I think this is an important topic. We've done episodes similar to this, not really before, but I think that the conversation about women's health, the conversation about how do we protect, how do we take care of our bodies is an ongoing conversation that we women, this is a women's podcast, that we need to be having. And as Christians, we need to be looking at the pro-life, the dignity-focused perspectives. We need to be looking at it, coming at it from that perspective. So I'm really excited to have my friend Elizabeth on. I'm going to read a little bit about her bio, and then we're just going to get right into it. So, Elizabeth is a mother and a registered nurse with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing and a birth and postpartum certified doula. Her work is rooted in genuine compassion, which honors the dignity, the value, and sacredness of every woman, family, and pregnancy. She is certified in fertility, education, and medical management, also known as FEMM, teacher. As a result of her deep love for teaching women and men about God's design for their sexuality and the beauty of cooperating with a woman's natural ovulation cycle. She's also certified teen FEMM teacher, specializing in empowering adolescent girls in understanding their bodies and reproductive health. Thank you so much for coming on, Elizabeth. I'm really excited. So let's just get in. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Let's learn your testimony. How did you become the Elizabeth we see today?
Thank you so much for having me, Mallory. I'm thrilled to be here. I have such a passion for sharing this message, especially with young women, because honestly, I wasn't told. So I wasn't told this information until I was probably in my mid to late 20s. Did I start kind of unpacking some of this stuff, and it led me down this path that has really been, I think, God's calling on my life, and that's to serve, in the life affirming ministry that I'm a part of right now with Sidewalk Advocates for Life, but also just to be empowering women through God's design for them as uniquely made individuals. And that means often that incorporates childbearing and what the work that I do as a doula, as a birth worker, empowering women to have incredible birth experiences and really supporting them through that time, since it is such a major transitional time in a woman's life and a family's season of a family. So these are all things that I'm very passionate about. So pregnancy, childbirth, the postpartum time, breastfeeding, all of that is why I became a doula. Then also became a nurse, and now I'm doing full-time life affirming ministry.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. You said you did not, you weren't told this growing up. So what were you told?
Yeah, so when I was in 8th grade, I moved to California, and I was I was being raised by a single dad at the time. My mom was living on the East Coast, so I was living with my dad, who was a great father, but didn't.
I'm sure this
didn't
was a
really,
difficult topic.
It was a little awkward as a teenager.
Yeah.
Dad, he didn't really want to talk to me about my Christian, stuff, right? So
yeah.
So basically, I learned from where I think a lot of people learn from, and that's from the school system, the public school system. Planned Parenthood came into my middle school and taught sex education. And so that was around the time that I lost my virginity, and I believe I was around 14, 15. And right away, who did I turn to for help? It was Planned Parenthood. Because that's the name that I learned about, and I became a patient of Planned Parenthood. I got my birth control there. I did all my STI testing there throughout my young adult life. And
Mm.
so I really didn't know any better, you know? And so it wasn't until I had a really radical conversion. I basically came back to the Lord slowly, resistantly. Um, Came back to the Lord, and then had a conversion to Catholicism because of a relationship that I was in. I was dating a guy that was raised Catholic. I made the full commitment, came into the Catholic Church around 2009. And then what happened was I started learning about the humanity of the human person, like the dignity of the human person, and what that means.
Mm.
And just this deep understanding of that concept. So from, fertilization until natural death is what I started hearing this language, and all the details that come with that. So from the moment a uniquely made human life is made at fertilization all the way till natural death, like just that stuff I never had even thought about really on a deeper level. And so I started to learn about things like birth control is harmful, not only harmful for your body, but also harmful for your spiritual self, for your soul.
And we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, I want you so you had the conversion, you learned more about human dignity, and now you are a teacher of that
Yeah.
through the FEMM method. Can you explain what FEMM is?
Yes. So FEMM stands for Fertility, Education, and Medical Management. So if you go to femmhealth.org, you can find all kinds of FEMM practitioners. I'm listed on there as a FEMM educator. And basically, it teaches you to look at your ovulation cycle and ovulation as the fifth vital sign. So what does that mean? Well, it means that it reveals a lot of information about your health, and things like your hormones impact the symptoms that you have. For example, during your period, could be like if you're having very uncomfortable symptoms, for example, like heavy periods or cramping or headaches or moodiness. It could be a sign that there's a medical condition that needs to be looked at. And FEMM really teaches to look at the root cause of those symptoms. And if you're a medical provider like Megan Bloom, who you're going to have on another episode for your Patreon folks, she really dives deep into the medical treatment. So for me as a FEMM educator, I'm just teaching the FEMM Basic Series, which is a series of 3 classes. It really dives deep into understanding the woman's body, her ovulation cycle. It also touches on the man's fertility and how important
That's good.
it is. It is very important to understand that as well, because the man is a key component of fertility as well.
Yeah.
Not all the responsibility is on the woman, believe it or not. The man has a lot to do with it as well. So I love working with FEMM. I think the app is fantastic. The FEMM app is something I think every woman should have. It's free. It's really user friendly. So I highly encourage your listeners to download the FEMM app and just start paying attention. It walks you through a lot of the signs, the biomarkers that you're going to be paying attention to, like cervical fluid, like you're bleeding during your period. Is it heavy? Is it light? Are you having a shift from dryness to moisture, for example? And what does that mean? So it gives you a lot of information just through the FEMM app alone.
This is really good. I know that a lot of people have been talking about taking their health back. And people who are Christian, not Christian, people who are pro-life, not pro-life, this is a huge topic. And I think when we start to understand our bodies, when we are able to comprehend what is going on, when we can say confidently, our period, our ovulation is the fifth vital sign, I think once we can do that, we'll be able to live better, healthier, more fulfilling lives. And I kind of want to transition that into the question that every time I've ever posted about this gets tons of like comments, positive and negative,
Yeah.
about the big BC, birth control.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about, because once again, like I said, people who are not even pro life, people who aren't even Christian, are
Right.
now going away from the whole birth control thing. We're seeing how women have been lied to. We're seeing, the long sheet of paper of like all the side effects, but oh, it's fine. We're seeing that now. People are talking more freely about how their moods have changed, how I all of a sudden I had depression and then I got off and then I didn't. Wonder what that
Yeah.
means. We're
Yeah.
seeing all of this, and some people still aren't convinced, but can we talk a little bit about the two aspects of birth control, why we should talk, get off of it medically and then also spiritually for those of us who are
Mm.
Christians?
Mm. Yes. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, honestly, and I feel like I could talk for hours about this topic. But basically, I mean, with my own testimony alone, I remember when I decided to get off of birth control, I remember feeling, if I could describe it, it was like I felt in tune with my body again. It was like I
Hmm.
had sensations in my body, or just a feeling of being connected to my body in a way that I had not felt when I was on the birth control pill for so long. And it was almost like this detachment from my body, in a way, like a physical detachment, like a numbing sensation, in a way where I didn't feel
Hmm.
connected to my body. And that was honestly the biggest thing that I remember when I came off birth control. Because what happens when a woman is going through her natural ovulation cycle, there are fluctuations, a lot of fluctuations of her hormones, right? So
Hmm.
when she's having a natural ovulation cycle and all of these hormones are changing throughout that ovulation cycle, you really feel the different phases of your cycle. When you start to learn about it and the intricacies of it, it helps you understand, oh, wow, like I'm feeling this way today because I can look at my cycle and I know where I'm at, and you make that connection. So to me, our cycle is revealing all of these details about ourselves, about our health, especially our hormone health, also about lifestyle and things like that, and the way that our lifestyle impacts our hormone health. But back to the birth control, when we are putting like synthetic hormones into our body, right? So
Hmm.
when you are on a birth control pill, for example, depending on what you're using, right? There's many different methods of birth control. There's the IUD, there's a copper IUD, there's the other IUDs. There's the Depo Provera, right? There's the
Yeah,
Nexplanon
there's a
implant.
bajillion
But
ways.
like, yeah, there's a bajillion different ways, right? Well, the bottom line is that you are basically giving your body synthetic hormones, and you're not allowing the body to go through its normal fluctuations of hormones. So when you're on the pill, for example, the pill works in three different ways, and I think this is really important information. It works by thinning out the lining of the uterus, which makes it less favorable to human life, like an implanted, fertilized egg implanting into the inner lining of the uterus. Okay. So it thins the lining of the uterus. It also helps disrupt your cervical fluid. So in essence, like dries up and changes your cervical fluid in a way that it makes it less, favorable for human life to grow and develop. Okay.
Mm.
And then the third way is it's supposed to, one of the actions is to stop ovulation from occurring. Right. So that's how it actually works, by preventing pregnancy, right? By stopping ovulation. But I think that all of us can say that we have known a woman or two that have gotten pregnant while on the pill, or even
Hmm.
while using the IUD, right?
Hmm.
I know two women right now that are friends of mine that got pregnant, and they had the IUD. And what happened is, different things can happen, but these things are not 100% effective, right?
Yeah.
So basically, um, when you're putting synthetic hormones into your body that are not meant to be there, you're tricking the body, you're tricking the brain, and it basically is stopping a natural function from occurring. So if you think about it, why would you take a natural function and stop it?
Right. Right.
You don't want to do that. That would be against our natural, just the way that our bodies are operating, right? And so even just if you're thinking of it from a health standpoint, taking a normal natural function and stopping it can have some long lasting effects, right? So that's one thing, is just when you're thinking about birth control.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
And this is probably opinion. I don't know if there's any medical information to back this up. Do you think that has something to do with, I feel like a lot of my friends, a lot of my peers, people in my age range, started birth control when they were 14 or 15 for acne, or, or their parents put them on it. And now I feel like a lot of people are trying to get pregnant, and I feel, maybe I just wasn't paying attention, but I feel like I've never seen so many people struggle getting pregnant. Do you think that has something to do with it, or weird coincidence?
Yeah. So I can't speak on like the latest research on that. And I think that's a really good question for Megan Bloom when she does your Patreon session, because she's really in the day-to-day with research and things like that. However, I do know that it can take a while for a woman's natural cycle to return after being on birth control for a while. So basically, it really depends on the woman. Every woman's body is different, but your fertility doesn't necessarily just suddenly come back and return quickly after getting off of birth control, synthetic.
And I don't think people know that.
A lot of women do not know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but then again, when we talk about birth control, it also masks a lot of underlying health conditions that are going on. And so it's like putting a Band-Aid fix on certain things that are happening. So you're covering up and masking symptoms because you're altering your body's natural rhythm of things, and your body's natural indicators that maybe something is abnormal. Right? So you're masking that with these hormones that are causing you to have the same level of hormones, right? Instead of fluctuating hormones, right? So depending on what type of birth control you're on, but you're masking these underlying health conditions that you could be diagnosing earlier if you weren't on the synthetic birth control. So that's really important for women to understand.
Okay, that's really, really good information. Because once again, people just aren't discussing it. I mean, now we're talking more about birth control, or we're at least talking about like getting off of it. But I don't know if we're getting to the intricate parts of, hey, you have to kind of fix your hormones. I guess, would that be the terminology that you would use? Like, fix them, or how would you guys say it?
I think that a lot of doctors, honestly, are just not taught how to treat women without giving them the birth control pill. For example, the birth control pill is used for many different conditions like acne, irregular periods, heavy periods. It's used for all these things, but really it's not treating the root cause of the problem. So that's something that I think that Megan Bloom can definitely unpack a little more for your Patreon listeners. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah. So I want to go back to the question about the spiritual aspects of birth control. Can you kind of dive into that? As there's Christians listening who, they are married and they just feel as if they, so they're having sex with their spouses, and they feel as if they just cannot give up that birth control because they don't want to have children right now. What could you say spiritually? How does birth control affect you?
Sure. Yeah. So this is a lot to unpack. So I'm going to have to start where I feel like I have to start to kind of lay the foundation for this, and the reason why there's a spiritual component that impacts a marriage, or even just an individual woman's soul, in a way where we have to think about this on a deeper level. Okay. So when I say one thing is the abortifacient effects potentially, okay, of synthetic hormonal birth control. Okay, there. When I talked about those three actions that the birth control has earlier, that can lead to an early loss of a pregnancy. Okay, so a lot of women don't know that you can lose a very early pregnancy because that fertilized egg does not implant into the lining of the uterus properly, and it doesn't have the proper nutrients to survive, grow, and develop. Right. So that is one big component when you're married to someone and you've made this lifelong commitment with them, and if you believe that life begins at conception, at fertilization, that's a uniquely made human being, all the DNA is there. Why would you want to have a loss of one of your children? Okay, so that alone is something to really think about and to research. If you're living if you're in a marriage, and especially if you're a Christian woman and you believe that life begins at conception. So I do want to lay the foundation though with starting in Genesis. Okay, in the Bible, God made man and woman. Okay, and He gave them dominion over the world. Right. And if you're thinking about like the Garden of Eden, where Eve and Adam were naked in the garden, they had this deep intimacy with the Lord, with God, right? They had this deep intimacy. They were naked and they felt no shame. And then suddenly you have the serpent comes in and tempts Eve in the garden, and Adam is supposed to be her protector, watching out for her, and he was not really doing his job. And Eve listened to the cunning serpent, right? And she ate from the fruit that she was forbidden to eat from. And then basically sin came into the world, right? Mm-hmm. So if we believe that, we need to just have that in the back of our mind, right? As Christians, right? Okay. And then I'm going to kind of go forward to, if man and woman were created in the image of God, they were uniquely made, man and woman, right? The woman Eve was to be Adam's companion, right? But if we believe that God designed women and men to be different, but to be complementary of one another, I think that's a key thing to remember, is that we're complementary of one another. But then beyond that, do we believe as Christians, for example, that God designed marriage? Is that a biblical thing? Did God design marriage, right? So in the Bible, it talks about, I'll just read this from Genesis really quick. It's talking about Adam and Eve in the garden, and this is from Genesis 2, it's 2:23. The man said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, and for she was taken out of man," right? For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh. And this is what I want to talk about, the one flesh part. So when a man and woman say their marriage vows, traditional marriage vows, they actually, are saying yes to God to procreate. So in the Bible says to go and be fruitful and multiply. It talks about that with Adam and Eve. It talks about to go and be fruitful and multiply. And so that talks about procreation, right? That we need procreation to continue the human race. And so there's this aspect of the marital union between man and woman that is procreative, okay? So the natural design of intercourse is procreation, right? But if you look at nature, it is to procreate, right? Yeah. However, when you're married as man and woman within a Christian marriage, you are also there. It is to unify you as husband and wife, to unify you and to also bring new life into the world, right? You're co-creating life with God, okay? So if you think about those two things, to be unitive and then also to procreate, those are the aspects of marriage. And so if we believe that, and we believe that our fertility is a gift, that was given by God. Why would we cut that off and stop that natural action from happening?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, why would we? I've thought about that. I'll say, so I got more into this topic, I guess, the further I've gone into pro-life world.
Yeah.
And I've thought about those exact, like, why are we stopping that?
Yeah.
Why the whole purpose of birth control is to stop A, what God has ordained, and B, to just stop our natural body. Like, you're literally halting what your body is naturally was designed to do.
Yeah. Right. Right. And so the bodies, there's this whole teaching called theology of the body, and I can't get into that today, but what I'm going to just say is that the concept is that our bodies, the man's body and the woman's body, speak a language, a love language with their bodies. And the man and the woman's bodies, when they come together in the marital embrace or the marital union, or the act of, intercourse with husband and wife, right? You're coming together as one flesh. You are saying with your body, yes. You're saying, yes, I love you. I give you my entire self. And really the bodies speak a love language. And really it is, if you want to think about it this way, it's the way that God loves the church. Total sacrifice for us, for us. He made us out of love. We wouldn't be here if God didn't love us, because God doesn't need us. And so when we get married and we have a spouse and we make that lifelong commitment, we are saying yes to that. We are saying, yes, I love you and I want to give you my whole self. I will lay down my life for you as my spouse. And I want to uphold you as my spouse. And basically, and defend you and protect you, right? God, it says in the Bible that women are to be subservient or to their husbands, but the men are to love their wives the way that God loves the church. Right?
Yes, and people leave out that other part. Yeah.
Leave out that second part, and it's so critical. And so when you're on contraception, what I wanted to go back to is that you're cutting off a part that says, instead of your body saying, I give you my whole self, you're cutting something off that is reserving your fertility. You're holding it back. You're withdrawing that from this person that you've entered into this union with, a lifelong union with, if you believe in marriage being lifelong, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So my next question, though, is how do we get the men on board? How can people talk to their spouses about this?
Sure.
Or even like your brothers, your friends.
Yeah, just men in general. So I think men and women often have a hard time understanding one another, right? We can all agree to that. We hate differently. We have a hard time really getting each other sometimes. There's that book, what is it? Men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Yeah.
And I think that we all desire to have a better understanding of one another. And I believe that when a woman is charting her cycle and analyzing her cycle, and she understands the intricacies of that and the way that it teaches her more about herself and the essence of who she is and her identity. Men can use that information to help them understand us better. When they're whether it's your brother, your husband, or whatever, if the men in our lives could understand the way that a woman's natural rhythm and her natural cycle impacts her day to day, the way she functions, the way she interrelates with people, her moods, right? Women's hormones change very frequently, especially during ovulation, that time of ovulation. And men's are very different. They're almost like a flat line of hormones, right?
Yeah.
So even just for men and women to understand each other more, it's really important for men to understand the woman's cycle and what's going on. But then beyond that, within a marriage, if men and women use this, if husband and wives use this method of, like, for say, fertility awareness or natural family planning, whatever word you want to use, it really teaches them to communicate better with one another and to make the marital act more intentional. The marital act becomes more intentional because you know what the procreative aspect of it, right? During certain times of the month. It's not every day that a woman can get pregnant, right? She's not fertile every day of the first cycle. So if you know we are entering into this together right now because we want to conceive a child, that is really intense, right? That is super intense, and you know very intentionally what you're doing in that moment. So I believe that it deepens it, and research says actually as well that it increases communication, it deepens intimacy. So when you have a deeper connection emotionally with your spouse, you're going to have better intimacy. That's just that's what the evidence says, and actually it decreases your risk for divorce as well.
Ooh, ding, ding, ding,
ding, ding, ding, ding, ding. So those are some benefits of using natural family planning or fertility awareness, right there.
That's good. So everyone listening, clip this in this part to your husband so he can understand why you're continually talking about it and how he should come on board. I did want to say something. While you were talking, you made the comment that a woman cannot get pregnant every day. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's a huge misconception. People are like, I have to be on birth control because I just can't get pregnant right now. And it's like, no, what is needed to be pregnant?
Okay, so first of all, a woman has to be ovulating to be able to conceive naturally. She has to be ovulating. If she's not ovulating, she can't get pregnant naturally. So the other thing is that a woman is naturally, if she's not on any form of synthetic hormones that are going to prevent her from ovulating, for example, right? Like birth control, she is not going to be, she's only going to be fertile during about a week and a half of her whole cycle. About a week and a half of her entire ovulation cycle is she actually fertile and able to conceive a baby under the right circumstances. So the man is a very important part of the equation. The man has to be healthy. He has to have healthy sperm. Okay. So it's not just all about the woman.
That's good. That's good. And I'm glad you cleared that up because, I mean, I've talked to people and they're like, well, and I'm like, no, you cannot get pregnant every single day. You do have to, I've mentioned to people also, another thing is just going ahead and learning your cycle, especially once you get off birth control, because if you're on birth control, then it's not a real cycle. So you don't really know your cycle then.
Exactly.
A couple more questions. The next question I have is, why do you think we're not really taught this at school, at some churches? You know, a lot of, everybody knows I'm Protestant, and I just don't remember, I was never taught this. Like, I went to a Christian school, we weren't really taught about this, and I really think that if we were taught this, we could, girls would be more cautious about who they allow into their bodies. They would understand a little bit more their value, in my opinion. Yeah. So why do you think this isn't taught?
Sure. So, I mean, I think there's a lot to that. I think that one is physicians don't know about it. Okay. Like a lot in regular medical school, even with OBGYNs, gynecologists, they're really not taught the details of this and how to treat the root cause of reproductive issues. Right. And so they're masking them with a treatment, which is often the birth control pill. So physicians, for one, are not getting the training needed. Like FEMM trains medical doctors to actually use FEMM protocols to treat the root cause of these underlying issues that are going on, that are maybe preventing a woman, for example, from getting pregnant. So I also think that we have a cultural issue where we don't want to talk about things that are uncomfortable. Right?
Yeah.
So even within families, and often within families, I mean, I think parents are responsible for training their children, educating their children. But I will tell you, most teenagers don't really want to talk to their parents about this stuff. No. It's uncomfortable and awkward already. And so, and I think your average parent doesn't feel equipped to talk about it because honestly, women often don't even know this information. And so that's why I feel so compelled and passionate about sharing it, is because I feel like this knowledge is power. We need this information to understand our authentic identity as women. This is critical to who we are and what makes us different. It's
Amen.
and it gives us so much information about our health.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is a marvelous segue into, you have some classes coming up where you're going to kind of discuss this so people can be more, so they can have more knowledge. Can you talk a little bit about how people can get involved, like what you'll talk about in the class?
Sure, yeah. So FEMM teaches a 6-hour course series. So it's over a period of 3 months. I do 2 hours each month. So it really starts off with the basics of understanding your body. And then the second session is all about family planning. So natural family planning. And then the third session is called FEMM Expert, where you basically take everything you've learned and you kind of go into a little bit more deeper analyzing of individual chart patterns and things like that. But throughout that 3 month of the series, the 3 months of the series, really within the 3 months, if a woman is tracking her cycle and she's charting for 3 months consistently without being on any form of synthetic birth control, for example, so hormone-free birth, no birth control, and she's charting her cycle, within 3 months, you should be able to pick up on your own individual pattern and also determine whether or not there's something that is abnormal going on where you really need to seek medical, get with a medical provider to get some medical expertise. Like FEMM has trained physicians on the FEMM website where the women can actually get lab work done and really take a look at what is going on, what's causing abnormalities in their cycle.
That's good. And if you are interested in taking our class, when is the date? The next class?
So it starts on in about a week. So March 27th is the first class. And folks can learn more by emailing me at AVL FEMM instructor. So that's AVL FEMM instructor at gmail.com. You're welcome to email me and I can send you a description of the class. I also have a website where you're welcome to email me there as well. It's babybodysoul.com. I have a little information contact page there where you can send me an email, and I'm happy to respond to you there and get you the information about the class series. But it's going to be a virtual class series. It starts March 27th, and then it actually ends with a bonus session in June with Megan Bloom, who's doing your Patreon session. She is a physician assistant trained in FEMM, and she's going to be doing a medical management Q&A to kind of wrap up the class series.
That's really exciting. I'll link the website and the email in the description and in the show notes, so you guys can have that. Because great timing. Now that you're listening to this, great timing. Join the class and learn something. Seriously, I was thinking about that. Especially because it's online. I'll be able to.
Online. Yeah, we can do it from home.
That's perfect. So last question, which is our big question that we ask every guest that we have on the podcast. It is, if every girl in the entire world was looking at you right now, what advice would you give them? No pressure, but it is every single girl.
Yeah. I would say to learn about your body, become more in touch with yourself and your unique identity as a woman. And this is going to basically, help you understand who you are, right? And your purpose in life, really, in my opinion. This unlocks so much about you that is so beautiful and intricate, and just helps you as a woman appreciate your dignity, I think that is so important for us as women to know our value and our dignity. And also, I would say to please tell all your friends, tell all your girlfriends about this, because it's going to empower them. And I think women are naturally attracted to other women and sharing information. And so please, go to the FEMM, download the FEMM app today, go to
I'm going to do
femmhealth.org,
that.
take a look and learn more about how to understand your body and how to do it naturally, hormone free.
That's great. Thank you so, so much, Elizabeth. I am so grateful that you were on here. So much was learned. So much was learned. If people want to get more information, if they want a book or a podcast just to continue learning, what would you recommend?
Sure. So I have several books that I think are really great resources, and I'll just name them. They're 3 different books. One of them is really nice for women that are ages 16 to 24, and it's called The Happy Girl's Guide to Being Whole. It's really visual and really well done, very easy to read. It teaches you, it says what you never knew about your natural body. Okay, and it's by Teresa Kenny. That's one. And then this is called Holistic Feminism, and it's written by Leah Jacobson, who started the Guiding Star Project. And it says healing the identity crisis caused by the women's movement. So I think that is really, really important information. And then the last one is really great from a Christian perspective, and it's Our Bodies Tell God's Story. And it's by Christopher West.
Fantastic. I think we might even do a giveaway with one of these books. And this is good. And this conversation, as I've said about a lot of conversations now, is going to be an ongoing conversation on the podcast, because I really do think that we need to be talking about these things. Like Elizabeth said, we need to be sharing this. Many people don't know. I mean, outside of pro-life world, people, like I said, people are talking about getting off birth control, but they're not really talking about the alternatives. And like, people are talking about it. Are they actually doing it? But more knowledge you have, the more we're discussing these things, the more we'll be able to see and like help each other, our fellow sisters. So I am so grateful once again for you coming on. Oh, sorry. Last thing, if someone wants to connect with you, how can they connect with you?
Sure. So babybodysoul.com, or they can email me about FEMM classes at Asheville, or AVL. It's the abbreviation for Asheville. AVL FEMM instructor at gmail.com. And that's AVL FEMM instructor at gmail.com.
Perfect. Thank you everyone for listening. I know you enjoyed this episode, so go ahead and share it. I think this is a fabulous episode to share with your friends that are Christian specifically, and they are struggling about the whole concept of birth control. I think this episode, we really, Elizabeth gave some amazing arguments that were grounded in truth about the harms of birth control. I think it's also a really good episode for people who are trying to get in control of their health, who are, in the age range that we all are, in our, mid to late 20s, early 30s. If they are just trying to be more in charge of their health, this is just a fabulous episode for them to have. And on YouTube and on this, in the YouTube comments and on Spotify, let us know, how did you first learn about, what was your first introduction to your body? Was it, did Planned Parenthood come to your school? Did you just have a teacher assembly where they told you don't have sex? Like, how did you learn? What was your first interaction, and how do you feel about that? You think that was a good idea? You think it was a bad idea? Let us know. Let us know in the comments. Let us know on the Spotify questions engagement. Let us know on Instagram too. Let us know how it was, and if you think it was a positive experience. And then lastly, if you are listening on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and you like it. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure you're subscribed and you leave a review. If you're listening on Spotify, make sure you follow and you answer the question. If you're listening everywhere else, make sure you interact somehow. We have to get this information out. When we interact with the podcast on whatever platform it is really good for the algorithm. So like random people who might not normally listen to this podcast will be like, oh, what's this? And listen. And we really want this information out there, especially for Women's Month. So if you are listening, make sure you share it, tell all your friends, all that. And thank you guys once again for listening. Thank you, Elizabeth, for coming on. And have a good day, night, evening, however, wherever you're listening. Bye.
Bye.